It is an honor to be here, and thank you to all of you who came to a panel discussion on infant mortality. You're really brave, and thanks for being here. I appreciate that. I really want to thank the YWCA and Valerie Galloway, who believed 6 months ago that we'd actually have some booties to show to the group. It's an honor to be here at the YWCA. Their mission is eliminating racism and empowering women, which really closely aligns with the goals of the Mourning Project, so thanks. I also want to thank some of the professionals who've provided some in-kind donations for the project and really helped to get off the ground. Chris Murley did web design, Jack Kulawick, photography, Dan Buckley is a local filmmaker, and he helped me find these wonderful local filmmaking students, Alyssa, Michael, and Luke. Thank you for your time. My friend Janet Windsor did all of the graphic design for the project, so if you see anything pretty, it's probably hers. In addition, she made 50 pairs of baby booties for the project, so definitely a good friend. My sisters, Nancy and Kathleen. Kathleen's here tonight. Between the two of them, they've made over 500 pairs of baby booties since the project started, and they, now that isn't due strictly to the OCD gene that runs in our family. There's a lot of sisterly love there, and I really appreciate it, so thank you both. And I want to thank some of the project cheerleaders. There are people out there telling everyone they know about this. And Karen Lucas, Trish Hastings Sargent, who's here, has pledged over 100 booties and is wonderful to be here tonight. Mitch Anderson, Jerry Morano has made over 50 pairs of baby booties, so thanks Jerry for being here. Kathleen Koopman, my friend Jackie Davis in Illinois, pledged 200 booties. Anna Martinez is here as well. Thank you so much. You've been there from the beginning, Anna. And I dreamed up the Mourning Project about a year ago when I read the headline, American babies 76% more likely to die than infants in other rich countries. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And I realized the only reason that that is true is that people don't know about it. I truly think this is an awareness problem. And I thought, well, I'm going to raise awareness, and I'm going to make a little pair of baby booties, a little elegy for every baby who dies in a year. And I went to the CDC website and found out that would mean I would be making 23,000 baby booties, and I knew right away I needed some help with that. So I've been talking about the Mourning Project ever since then. And the installation outside has over 3,100 baby booties. Imagine another 20,000 out there. And I know that we can easily turn up the page when we read a statistic in the newspaper, but I know that we're not going to be able to walk by 23,000 pairs of baby booties without wanting to do something about this very solvable problem. Merle Eintracht is a woman from Green Valley, and she sent me 20 pairs of baby booties in memory of one baby named Courtney Marie. And she wrote me a long letter about Courtney's mom and how she was keeping Courtney's memory alive. And she began the letter with the sentence, "My love is in every stitch." And I got to thinking, how many stitches are in 23,000 pairs of baby booties? And I thought about how much love there is there. And I would like all the makers in the room, there's several of you here, if you could stand up. Your love is in every stitch. Thank you. You put the community in this community art project. And we created the Mourning Project to witness the grief of parents who've lost a child, to raise awareness about the problem of infant mortality in the United States, and to begin a discussion about how we can give American babies the best chance at life. And I don't know anyone better suited to begin that discussion tonight than our moderator, Dr. Linda Lumsden. She teaches courses in social justice journalism, journalism ethics, journalism, gender, and race at the University of Arizona. Her book, Social Justice Journalism, A Cultural History of the Social Movement Media from Abolition to #Women's March, will be published this summer. She's also the author of Black, White, and Red, All Over, The Cultural History of the Radical Press in its Heyday. Linda has written about numerous forms of social movement media, including the Occupy movement media and online contentious journalism in Malaysia, where she spent a year as a Fulbright scholar. So thank you, Linda, for being our moderator tonight.
Mary, thank you so much for putting together this really amazing, important, and rather poignant exhibits in the panel as well. Thank you. I'm really honored to be a part of it. I'm going to briefly just let you know of three panelists who are sitting in front of you, and then as each one talks, I'll give you a more in-depth introduction of them. Afterwards, we'll have a discussion among ourselves on the topic, and we've left some time at the end to take some questions and answers from you in the audience as well. Let's see, I'll go from the end there. Bonita Katz is sitting at the end there. She's a registered nurse and childbirth educator and doula, based in Hearthstone, Wyoming. Next to her is Laura Vargas, and Laura is actually a March of Dimes Momentum Gretchen Carlson Advocacy Fellow of 2018. When her son was born quite prematurely a couple of years ago, she got interested in this topic, and she'll talk more about her personal experience. Stacie Wood is next to me, and she is an Ob-Gyn nurse for nearly 20 years now, and works over at TCM in an interesting position she'll talk about more in depth. So Bonita, we'll begin with you to tell you a little more about her. As a doula, she provides physical, emotional, and informational support to pregnant women and their families. She's the owner of Hearthstone, Wyoming, and she offers perinatal education to parents and professionals around the country and in countries as far away as Taiwan. She's currently developing an educational program based on the International Childbirth Initiative with plans of improving childbirth experience and outcomes around the world. She's also president of the International Childbirth Education Association. So thank you, Bonita.
It's my pleasure to be here. This is a cause that I think if you're here, it means something to you. I read a little quote on the banner once we came in the door. It said, "Showing up to witness someone else's loss is a vital expression of our own humanity." Can I say it's also powerful? Your presence here makes a difference. If you've read the information and you heard what Mary said at the very beginning, it's really pretty appalling that the United States spends more on maternal child health than any other nation on the face of the earth. And yet, of all the developed world, our statistics for infant mortality and maternal mortality as well are the worst. The worst. The United States ranks 170 on that list. Serbia has better statistics than the United States. Cuba has better statistics than the United States. And if we were just talking about numbers, that would be sad, appalling. We're talking about people. We're talking about children. And that makes it pretty inexcusable. There are a certain amount of infant deaths that we can't do anything about, because how those babies are grown inside of a mama and how they are born is a mystery to a great degree. We know a lot. There's a lot we don't know. And it's very easy, I think, when we have these kind of discussions and when we look at these kinds of issues, to be overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, our response is to want to blame that healthcare system or those insurance companies or our litigious society. And there are things, if you are involved in any of those areas, that's wonderful. Work to change in those areas. But for most of us, we're just regular folks. So my question and my challenge to you here tonight is, what can you do where you are? So I'm going to throw out some ideas here. One of which is that has to do with healthcare. There's a midwife in Florida. Her name is Jenny Joseph. And she runs a clinic. It's largely grant funded. But you know, if you're pregnant and you need prenatal care and you go into that clinic, you know what happens? You get prenatal care. You don't have to wait until you get this, until you filed for your Medicare, or until you have gotten this kind of insurance, or until you jumped through these hoops. If you need prenatal care, you get it. If you look at the statistics for her clinic, her infant mortality rate is a fraction of what it is in the state of Florida as a whole. And it's not because she deals with a privileged population. She deals with whoever walks through her door. So one of the things that we can work towards is making healthcare more accessible. Now, what does that take? That takes coordinating efforts with insurance companies, healthcare systems, and individual providers. It's not an easy thing, but it is doable if we all do our part. So again, I'm going to ask you, what can you do? What's your part?
Laura Vargas. Laura joined AmeriCorps and moved to Arizona. And then she worked with the homeless population for over a year and became a public servant with the state of Arizona, ensuring the public money was spent in a fiscally and ethically responsible manner. Her son, Lucien, was born premature at 28 weeks, weighing 1 pound, 3 ounces. Doctors gave Lucien a 50% chance of survival and severe disability at birth. After a long struggle, today he is a healthy 2-year-old. His birth made Laura realize that change is needed in our healthcare system. She believes there's work to be done and wants to get her hands dirty. As I said, she is a March of Dimes, Momentum, Gretchen Carlson Advocacy Fellow of 2018, and a procurement supervisor for the city of Phoenix. Laura?
Thank you. My husband and I went through a very traumatic pregnancy. Early on, we learned that there were problems with the baby and that he was not growing properly. There was a problem with the placenta. He was IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction. So the placenta was very stiff. It would push the blood to the baby, but it wouldn't actually accept the blood back from the baby. So he spent all of his calories forcing blood to the placenta instead of growing. And we didn't know why this was happening. We started seeing a perinatologist. We went through a lot of blood tests. We had an amniocentesis. We went through, we saw a fetal cardiologist. We ran the gauntlet of rare genetic testing, and we could not determine why. But the baby was only growing about 20 grams every 2 weeks. At 25 weeks, I was admitted to the hospital because the baby stopped moving. And I started being prepped for a C-section. I had the blood tests, I had the magnesium, and I stayed overnight in the hospital. My husband had to leave for work the next day because he didn't have a lot of time off. So I was alone in the hospital, and the doctors came in, and they said, "There's nothing we can do to save your baby." And it was the worst moment of my entire life. And I had to call my husband and tell him that his baby was going to pass away. And so he came back to the hospital, and he picked me up, and we went home to wait for the inevitable. We kept seeing our perinatologist. We kept going to our ultrasound appointments, and it was an incredibly painful experience to keep going. At 27 weeks, the baby stopped moving again, and so on the way to our ultrasound appointment, we planned his funeral. We wanted to be prepared in case it was the inevitable, and we wanted to be able to function in our grief. And so we went into the hospital, or we went into the ultrasound appointment, and we had to wait a really long time for the results. And the doctor came in, and he had a smile on his face. And he said, "Your baby grew 100 grams. He said, "I didn't think it was the same baby, so I had to double check the vial."
Most premature babies will meet up with their peers at about 2 years old. It took my son until almost 3 years old to meet up with his peers developmentally. He went through countless specialist visits, occupational therapy, physical therapy, feeding and speech therapy, countless tests and procedures. Today he's 3.5 years old. He's still very tiny. He only weighs about 22 pounds. He's just graduating out of 18-month clothing, which is super exciting for us. My husband and I were not prepared for that to happen. We had no idea what to do or anything around that experience. Lucian's birth has made me realize that there is so much work to be done on prematurity, on the health of moms and babies, and on support for NICU parents. So last year, in 2018, I applied for the Gretchen Carlson Advocacy Fellowship. Gretchen Carlson donated money from her Gift of Courage Fund to the March of Dimes to create a program in which they would teach women how to advocate for change. And so 19 women were chosen from around the country with very diverse backgrounds to come together to share ideas, to learn advocacy, and start a movement for change. Personal project, my goal in life is to ensure that every NICU parent receives the mental health care that they need, because the rates of postpartum depression and PTSD are very high in this really special population. So I've worked on developing a strategic plan to really look at all of the pieces that affect that population and how we can help them. So I've been looking at policy and research that's available. I've been looking at a social media strategy. How can we raise awareness on this subject in order to create change? So that's been my personal project that I've been working on. March of Dimes as a whole does some really amazing things, and two things I wanted to bring up to you. They have a prematurity collaborative, so they've got 340 organizations and about 600 individuals that come together to work on prematurity. They have a number of different types of working groups related to research and health programs and even communication. How do we talk about equity and frame it in a manner that it makes sense to people and it creates change? And they've also got prematurity research centers. So there are 6 of them. 5 of them are in the US and 1 is in London. And they're working on a transdisciplinary approach to research. So they're not just researchers like a biologist working in a silo. A biologist might work with an immunologist and a geneticist, and all different areas of study in order to collaborate together, because prematurity is not a one-issue problem. There are so many different pieces to the puzzle that affect it, and so they're working on creating kind of that transdisciplinary approach. So there's some really interesting stuff going on to help reduce prematurity, which is one of the causes of infant mortality. Thank you.
Stacie Wood, to my right, has been dedicated to obgyn nursing for 19 years. She began as a staff nurse in a high-risk antepartum and OB special care unit. Later, she worked as a clinical labor and delivery educator and community childbirth educator. As the Perinatal Safety Coordinator at Tucson Medical Center, Stacie now investigates event reviews, root cause analysis, and failure mode analysis. She also analyzes industry trends and issues. She's the recipient of the 2013 and 2014 Daisy Award for Extraordinary Nurses, the 2017 March of Dimes Nurse of the Year nominee, and the 2018 TMC Nurse Excellence Award.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and I really am passionate about this cause. I think we each share our own journey and our own story in life that is valuable to share. And similar to our other panelists, I do have my own story. Growing up as a young girl, I heard stories from my mother, who's here tonight, about her own losses that she experienced. And from a very young age, she'll tell you that I always said I wanted to be a baby nurse and take care of babies. I used to wear my grandmother's hat around when I had the opportunity when I went to visit her, back when they still wore nursing hats. We don't do that anymore, and sometimes I wish we would. But, and so I went to college, and I did become a nurse specializing in women's health. To my surprise, when I became pregnant, I thought, okay, I'm a labor and delivery nurse. I know the signs and symptoms to watch for if something goes wrong. And I felt well prepared to be pregnant, so I thought. So I was getting ready to take out a mother and her baby to the mother-baby unit, and I lived in Toledo, Ohio at the time. And I thought, well, I don't quite feel right. Well, nothing can be wrong. Let me go test my own urine. Let me check myself out, right? Because as a nurse, we're going to manage our own care, and we're really good at taking care of ourselves, so we think. And I thought, well, I think I'm checking out okay, and the symptoms persisted, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna take this patient out, and I went down the hall to see a doctor who wasn't even my doctor, and I said, I think I'm having some problems, and he said, well, let me take a look at you, tell me what's going on, who's your doctor, and he was a perinatologist at the time who specialized in high-risk pregnancies, and I was just seeing a normal OBGYN at the time. So this perinatologist says, well, how far along are you? And I said, 18 weeks. He's like, well, you certainly look much larger than 18 weeks. So as a pregnant woman, you're like, I don't think that's a compliment. So he said, let's do an ultrasound and we'll call your physician. And so as he's doing the ultrasound, he said, well, this is interesting. And sometimes it's not good for a doctor to say, this is interesting. And so he said, very interesting. And I said, tell me what's wrong, what's going on. And he said, we need to take you to the operating room right now. Your cervix is opening and we need to put stitches in your cervix to keep your baby in, or you're going to deliver. You can see it all comes rushing back, even when he's now a 15-year-old child. So I said, well, can someone call my husband? So they called my husband and said, you need to get here. We're taking her to the operating room right now. So I went to the operating room, and remember, I had been at work. So here I go on the stretcher to the operating room, and all the nurses are saying, where are you going? Is this a joke? Why are you on a stretcher? And no, it's not a joke. And so we were in the operating room, and of course I was crying and shaking. And then here I hear the doctor at the end of the table saying, oh, I need help in here. So I'm worried. And he said, you're 4 centimeters. And if you know anything about childbirth, you know that you're almost halfway to 10 centimeters. So they put stitches in, and they said, we're going to hope for the best, but we can't promise anything. So I went to the recovery room, and they put me in a position called Trendelenburg, where they put the head down, and I laid with my head down and my feet up in the air for 2 weeks, trying not to put pressure on my cervix. And then I laid in the hospital until I delivered at 36 weeks. And he really was a miracle birth because they didn't expect me to get past a few more weeks. So I had that experience. And then with my second child, they put in the stitches earlier, knowing that I was going to have issues related to the first pregnancy. And they put the stitches in my cervix at 13 weeks. And I was on complete bed rest in the hospital and at home until I delivered him a little before 36 weeks. So both miracle babies, but certainly what I felt after as being a nurse and going through those experiences, that it wasn't just a job to me anymore, it really became my mission field in life. And when I moved to Tucson, I said my job is to make Tucson a safer community for mothers and their children than when I found it. And that has really guided my work at Tucson Medical Center. So we're proud to say at TMC that we reduced our postpartum hemorrhage rate by 50% in the last year. We've reduced our preeclampsia admissions due to the training we're doing with the doctors in the offices, but certainly there's a long way to go. And something that I'm really impassioned about is the opioid crisis that is in our community. We are seeing more babies who are addicted to substances every week and every month, and it's continuing to climb in our community as well as our nation. But as a society and as a group of nurses and educators, we have to realize that there is addiction in our community, that we cannot turn our backs on these people. There's a lot of mental health in our community that affects us with the opioid crisis. So we have a program that we would love to invite people to get trained for. We have a room called NASA, and it's really the methodology is thinking about launching babies into being healthier, NASA, but it's for babies who are addicted to substances. So it's neonatal abstinence syndrome. So it's our neonatal abstinence syndrome annex. And so we have community volunteers who we train, who will come in and learn to cuddle and hold these babies who are addicted to substances. Sometimes their parents are there, sometimes their parents aren't there. Sometimes the mothers are in treatment or going through counseling themselves. But we have found that when these babies who are addicted to substances are held and cuddled, that they do so much better. So it's a special environment. It doesn't look like a hospital when you go in. The lights are very dim. There's no beeping monitors. We do lavender essential oils for these babies to help calm them. It's looking at a lot of different ways to calm and love on these babies, but the biggest thing is physical touch. And so we would love to invite you to be a volunteer at Tucson Medical Center in this aspect. But there's really a need for recognition in the community that there is a problem, and then how can we become ready as a community to address the problem. So thank you for having me.